Literacy Week powered by U Mortgage, our third session here of our Friday. We're very excited to bring this to you and have all of you join us. So just a few things, just logistical things before we get going here. As you enter the room, you'll see that your cameras and microphones are turned off by default. We ask you if you have any questions, which we encourage you to ask as many questions as you see possible that fit, to throw them either in the Q&A tab located on your menu bar, or you can use the chat feature as well. So again, we'd like to welcome you. In this session, we're going to be talking about investing in real estate and finding and funding off-market deals. And with this session, we're fortunate to have an expert with us, a loan originator with U Mortgage here, Jimmy Hobson. I'd like to introduce him and turn it over to him to kick things off for us. Thanks for being here, Jimmy.
Happy to be here. Okay, so guys, just wanted to invite you today. Today we're going to talk about finding and funding off-market deals, some more investment stuff. I welcome any and all of your questions. Obviously, I'm a loan originator, but I've got a background in creative finance, lease options, finding different bank products to use, whether it be with me as a lender or someone different, and just frankly helping you kind of invest in properties and figure out a way to navigate the market. So that's kind of why I'm here today, to help you and hopefully show you how to get houses for free, and then we can figure it out from there. So, got it. So obviously, goals for today, the biggest things we want to work on is we want to first and foremost figure out how to help you find deals. Okay, want to figure out how to help you structure deals. Obviously, relationships to fund those deals, and then of course make more money. So in doing those things, you know, you may have some questions. If it's something I say doesn't make sense, please raise your hand, you know, ping us, let us know what questions I can answer, because there's a lot of nuance to this. So for perspective, I've been a lender for 5.5 years. You know, I've been in and out of real estate off and on for a while. My business partner is a realtor. His specialty is finding off-market deals and figuring out ways to monetize those. And so, you know, one of the biggest ways we do it, you know, the market's a little tricky now. COVID shut down a lot of it. A lot of it, what we used to do is look at, go to the notice of default list. So pretty much every county and or every state, you should be able to find the notice of defaults. They get published in the newspaper. So one of the things we do is we go and hunt for those. And once we find those, then we go knock doors and find out, hey, are you looking to sell? Hey, you know, it looks like you're going to lose this property. What's your plans? Okay. Well, so the team goes out. Let's say they've got notice of default, right? They're going to get foreclosed on. Maybe they're going to sheriff's sale. Let's say today's April 1st. Maybe they're going June 1st. So they go out to them and we say, you know, hey, you know, I am Jimmy from Rise Home Buyers. I'm looking to go through and answer a few questions, you know, and ask everybody, but it looks like you got a notice of default, you're going to sheriff's sale. What are your intentions to do with this home? 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell us, we're trying to work it out with the bank, right? Well, that's the same old story over and over again. Very rarely does it get worked out with the bank. You know, because human nature is put their head in the sand and let things happen, right? So what we'll do is we'll say, well, hey, you know, if that doesn't work out for you, please let us know. Then more often than not, they call us back. So there's that. We've also got dialers calling, off-market properties, you know, vacant sellers, things like that. We picked up a couple of properties here locally from a guy that was literally living somewhere in Ecuador, I believe, somewhere in South or Central America, and just wanted to cash out and be done. So we picked up a couple houses in an area that cost us $290 a piece. We're probably putting 20 or 30 grand into them. One of them will retail for about 400, the other one about 450. So that kind of gets us into the finding sources, right? So that's what we do marketing. We send mailers out. Obviously, we put out there our feelers to realtors, whoever, you know, people that can't quite find money. We do that. So we always look at every single property, look for an exit strategy of every single property. So a lot of you guys may be familiar with the BRRRR method. If you're not, we'll kind of give you the acronym BRRRR. It's actually, he put it wrong. It's actually 4 R's. It's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Okay. So you find a property off market, you get hard money or whatever that looks like. Okay. You go in and fix it up. You go and rent it. You get someone in place at market rents or above. Then you refinance either through a DSCR loan. We'll talk about that in a minute, or you find local capital. Okay. So that's one big thing that works in the finding and funding of off-market deals. So marketing sources. So let's go back. So one of the biggest things is notice the default list. There are very specific attorneys that are set up that do a lot of these sheriff sales. Okay. Your county should be able to find them. If you go and look in the local newspaper on Saturdays or Sundays when they post the sheriff sales, they'll list the attorneys. Every attorney is going to have a website. You can go to the website and see what the status is, where you can go buy the house at the courthouse, or you could do what we just talked about, or knock on the door. You wouldn't believe, with the amount of equity that people have, how many people actually are sitting on that and not doing anything about it. And because again, human nature is they're just massively overwhelmed. They're going to run and hide from it, right? So that's where we get a lot of stuff. We also get a lot of leads from realtors. Okay, maybe they find a dilapidated house and say, hey, you may want to go knock on this door. Gas meter readers, power meter readers, people that work for the post office will point out stuff on their routes. Hey, this house is vacant. This house is empty. You oftentimes can go to the city and they'll tell you. The city doesn't like eyesores and vacant property. So if you can get in good with the city, they may give you leads. Hey, I want you to go look at this house and see if you can find someone who owns it, see if you can buy it, right? So that's the biggest thing. It's not an easy process, but if you do the work, you can get there. My partner and we have teams of realtors who literally go out, in addition to calling people, they go out and door knock. So we also hired a call center out of Columbia, of all places, and they will call vacant sellers and vacant seller lists, or out of state sellers. So they're looking for some houses that are owned by people that may want to sell. And you wouldn't believe some of the deals we find here. We found a house in the town I live in, and the guy just wanted to get out. So, he took an offer, just a cash offer, just to go away very quickly. That stuff exists all the time. Where you could go and wholesale it, make $5 or $10 grand, and your method may vary. You want to check your states and see what the legalities are. In Utah, you don't have to be a licensed realtor to do that. Now they're trying to change that because, of course, the government's trying to get their money, but that's one big thing that we do. So, the average wholesaler makes 5, 10, 15, and we're making 30, 40, 50 sometimes on a house. And so that's the biggest thing we do. So that's one way. Another way is a creative thing is studying zoning maps. So about 2 years ago, my business partner called me up and said, hey, there's this bar for sale. I'm like, well, why do I want a bar? And what's the point, right? It's commercial property, so obviously we get the cost benefits and the tax write-off. I was like, well, why do I want to own a bar? I don't care. It's dumb. It's been there 60 years or whatever. He's like, it's zoned CP3. And I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, we can build apartments. I'm like, done. Where do we sign up? So you never know what something's sitting on, because a lot of these cities will have opportunity zones, which means you get tax-funded benefits over time if you hold the property longer. A lot of times you can go lock up a piece of property, be the middleman, and find someone to come and build apartments on it. They'll give you, just for finding the property, they may give you a 10 or 15% finder's fee on the entire project, which means, maybe they build it out, and let's say it cash flows maybe it cash flows, 50 grand a month, right? And total cost expenses are say 30 grand a month. So maybe you're getting 20 grand. They give you a finder's fee of 10, 15, 20%. That could be 3-4 grand a month in perpetuity just for finding the deal. A lot of people operate that way, and sometimes they pay even more, because the hardest part is finding the deal, right? Now, most of us don't have the capital to build the apartments or the fourplexes or even the houses for that matter. But finding the deal is gold, right? It's the reason why salespeople are the ones that are paid more than anybody else in the world, because they find the deal. So that's one of the big things we do. So let's talk about funding these properties. So let's say you want to do it yourself. Let's say you want to wholesale, you want to flip, you want to rehab, you want to own rentals. So hard money is always going to exist. If you create a relationship with the right person, you can get hard money. Oftentimes hard money is based on the after repair value. So let's say a house is worth 300 grand after repair. Most of your hard money lenders are going to want to be in that 70 to 80% ARV, or after repair value. So if it's going to be worth 300, you need to be 210 to 240. Now, once you start creating strong relationships and you do this enough, a lot of these hard money lenders will actually lend you money to actually rehab the property. So you're out of pocket nothing. Sometimes they want you to pay the points up front. Sometimes they don't. But there's a lot of alternatives there to help you. So that's hard money. In our market, we're usually seeing 2 and 9 or 2 and 12, which means you pay 2 points, and then essentially at 12 is 1% a month. So if you get a $500,000 loan, you're going to pay 10 grand plus 5 grand a month in carrying costs. Now, more often than not, that gets paid at the end. Some people make you pay the points up front. Some people collect it at the end. Okay, that's hard money. Private money is once you graduate from hard money and you know enough people, that's where you find private money. You know, these big investors that maybe, you know, are sitting on 10, 15, 20 million and want to just make more money but give you better terms. That's once you've proven yourself, there is private money out there that exists. A lot of the private money actually funds the hard money because that's how they make their money, right? Seller financing. So let's say Bob and Mary are going to lose their house, right? They've got an FHA rate at 3%, and the payment's awesome, right? What you do is you do what essentially a sub to or a subject to, and you essentially do a wrap. So you take over their mortgage and you pay it, and you cash them out 10 or 15 or 20 grand, or whatever that number may be, to make them go away. A lot of these people are going to be upside down. Maybe if they're in foreclosure or sheriff sale, they may owe 10, 15, 20 grand in legal fees. But if there's enough equity in the house, you go in, you help pay those fees, you agree on a deal with them, and you give them money to go find a new place to live, because otherwise they're going to lose the house and it's going to kill their credit. Essentially, you're stopping them from having a foreclosure. So you can, a lot of times you can do that. A lot of people will happily carry a seller note because they don't need all their funds, right? And they'll give you, you know, like a balloon payment or something like that. So seller finance exists. There's a lot of great videos on YouTube. There's a guy by the name of Pace Morby, M-O-R-B-Y. I recommend you read a lot of his stuff and watch a lot of his videos. There's a lot of stuff too. Brilliant guy. And there's some great options. Now, then you've got your traditional versus non-QM. So maybe you want to qualify traditionally, go to the bank, get a loan, 30-year fixed, and your qualification is going to be based on your income, of course, and how the property rent rolls, right? So if the property rents and covers the rents, you can get that. Okay. Non-conforming is essentially a non-institutional loan. Off-market investors that'll do like a DSCR loan. DSCR stands for debt service coverage ratio. So the DSCR loan, the cool thing about that is you don't have to prove the income. So it's all based on the property renting at 1-to-1. So if your mortgage is $1,500 and it rents for $1,500, you're done. Now, a lot of these products have interest-only portions for like the first 5 or 10 years. They are a little more expensive when it comes to rates and fees, but on interest-only, it allows you to cash flow more. So that's a cool thing about the DSCR loan. A couple caveats to that: they do expect you to own a primary residence. You can't just go out and buy an investment property and then get a DSCR loan, because they want to make sure that you're not buying this without proving income just to go live there. Now, traditional investment properties you should be able to go buy without having to own a primary. You'd want to talk to your banker because they're qualifying you off your own income. So at that point, it doesn't matter as much. But that really is the biggest thing to get you going. So does anybody have any questions about funding that I can dig deeper into?
Jimmy, no questions popping up at the moment. I think you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. So that's really kind of how you fund this. So let's talk some more about marketing and sources, and then we'll dig into a couple of creative ways to go about it. So obviously, free is your sphere of influence, referrals. We talked about door knocking, of course, cold calling, social media. Can't tell you how many times my partners posted, "Hey, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in such and such city," and had people literally raise their hand and say, "I've got this, I want to sell it, but I don't want to deal with a realtor," because they don't want to go through the traditional back and forth, the 30 offers and all that fun stuff, right? Sphere of influence is huge. People like, trust, and know you. They're gonna reach out to you. Okay. Door knocking again. We'll door knock entire neighborhoods and say, "Hey, are you looking to sell?" No. And of course, nothing wrong with that. But then you ask the question, say, "Well, Mr. Homebuyer, if you could pick one neighbor you really don't like, and if I could go and make them the right offer to make them go away, who would it be? So they always point out, because there's always that one neighbor nobody likes, right? And you go knock on their door and say, hey, yeah, you'd be interested in selling your house, right? Because there's always some person that doesn't keep their yard up, or that is really the worst neighbor. And if you want them to go away, that might be a good way to do it. We joke about that, but it is reality. I do a lot of cold calling, but mainly it's cold calling off of lists. We do buy lists. We use some data from a company called Real Estate Worldwide. Kent Clothier is the owner of that company. He actually runs a real estate mastermind that my partner belongs to. It's called the Boardroom. And they literally have connections and data where you can pull data from, pretty much anything you want that is very accurate and verifiable. So if you want to mail out-of-state homeowners, you can mail that. If you want to mail, certain buyers and certain demographics and certain dollar amounts, you can do that. And then you can always, and they actually have the ability to create direct mail pieces for you and directly mail that. Now, I don't think that's something you want to rush out of the gate and do, because I don't think you want to cut your teeth and figure out how to make it work, what you like and don't like yourself, but that does exist. Now, these very same lists, you can hire VAs to call. A lot of people hire people over the Philippines, but even local virtual assistants, they'll hire them to call through the list. Some people like calling, and that's what they do. You can also do pay-per-click or have a website and drive traffic there. So those are really some of the bigger things that you see to be able to invest in property. So I'll tell you about the first property we bought and how we did creative financing. We had a friend. That was losing their house. They filed a bankruptcy. They did get a homestead exemption, and they got about 80 grand, but they had to leave their house. So we're like, well, and they had dogs. They couldn't go rent anywhere. And so we were talking, my business partner and I one day said, well, why don't we buy a house for them? We'll put our own money down, traditional mortgage, investment property, 20%. And then they'll give us the money back as essentially a lease option. So we own the house, we cash flow on rent, we get all we guaranteed a price in writing with them up front because they're friends of ours, we took care of them, but we get all the depreciation, all the tax benefits. And they have a price they can buy it for in 2 years. And if they don't perform because maybe their credit's not good enough yet, then we'll rewrite it and charge them some appreciation, because this very house that we bought at 302 is now worth probably 100 grand more 2 years later. So we may gain a little upside on that, but basically we own this house for nothing out of our pocket, because they made us whole on all the closing costs and all that. So that's one trick we do. We also did a lease option on another property. You guys will love this one. So we bought a house for $810. We had a guy that was renting the house was going to lose it. So we put 10% down to buy it. He put 10% down. So we gave him a lease option, 10%, and gave him a guaranteed buyout at $880 in 2 years. So he's in at 80 grand. We're in at 80 grand on the lease option. The loan's in our name, of course. But what we did was we locked him up so we cash flow every month. But because we needed our capital back out to move somewhere else, we brought an investor in. So the investor came in and signed up for the property, covered our $80,000 down. So now we're in the property zero. We get them 1/3 of the equity that we're going to get in 2 years. We gave them 1/3 of all the tax benefits, including depreciation and everything else. So essentially, that's how we own a house for free. Yes, your name's on it, but there are plenty of institutional lenders. Locally we have banks and credit unions that will finance properties, and they do not. We're liable for them. Obviously, we're the guarantor, but it does not go on our credit, so it doesn't exist anywhere. We closed at LLCs, and the properties don't exist. So that is one of the big reasons, one of the big ways that we do it. Now, sometimes you need more capital, but where you get started is you find people in your area. Every single major city in America has got what they call a RIA. It's a Real Estate Investment Association, right? We have multiple here in Utah. You can join that. I promise you, if you find the right people and find the right deal and bring it to somebody, they'll either partner with you or pay you money out. And so that's the way to build it up. Even if you got 2 or 3 wholesale fees or finder's fees, and all of a sudden you have 50 grand of your own cash, it makes it much easier to continue down that path and find better deals, right? And then do your own. So sometimes it's as little as getting started with the first group of people, and then moving on to the next group, right? So that's where you go back to your SOI referrals, because if you join these real estate investment groups, there's people that are far smarter than me and likely far smarter than you that have been doing this over and over and over again. And sometimes they'll do syndications where they'll allow you to put money in and get a piece of the pie on a long-term deal. Maybe it'd be a multi-unit or an apartment or whatever else. But that really is kind of one of the coolest things that you get the opportunity to deal with. So, obviously free is always the easiest way to go. Social media is a great way. Facebook, Instagram, things like that. Just get out there and start doing the work. You'll be amazed at what falls in your lap. We get deals all the time that we never expect, just because people know that we're in the real estate space. Obviously I'm an active lender. He's an active realtor. So we network well. And there's just some things we don't do, so we refer them to friends. And there's some things they don't do, so they refer them to us. But we know that there's always a deal out there. Literally, you could go knock doors and find a deal today. So if you're ever interested in that, certainly, raise your hand. I know there's some door knocking training going out, but there's so much good value on YouTube. Like I mentioned, Pace Morby is a great one to watch. Kent Clothier, Cody Sperber, Little Clever Investor, all sorts of free content that you can pick up and get snippets from without ever having to pay somebody for that. And that's kind of how we learn. Now we pay a lot for the masterminds now because that gets us in the room with people on a much higher level than us. But that is a good way to begin. So go ahead and hit the next slide, will you? Okay. So taking massive action. What does that mean exactly? So that means you're not afraid. You look at your local area, you join the RIA groups, you get a mentor, right? Most people will mentor you for free. Maybe they'll take a piece of your deal, but they'll mentor you for free, okay? And they'll get you moving. Now, this slide deck is created actually for a group of realtors that we taught, so I'm kind of giving a general overview based on it. But that's the biggest thing is, if you can have anything you want in life if you move forward and attack it, right? Because, this is not a super long class about investing. It's really just a guide. That's why, I invite you to ask questions should you have them. Where do you find sources of money? How did you find your first house? Those kind of things. I mean, those are the questions that I'm happy to answer. Who's a good lender in my area? So on and so forth. I can give you guidance on all of those things, what to avoid and what not to avoid. If you don't understand the housing market, you could very quickly be upside down and lose everything. But that's why I recommend these RIA groups and people in your area, because there are sharp people doing this in every city in America, whether it be Philadelphia or Boston or San Antonio or Salt Lake, where I'm at. That matters. Obviously, fear prevents everybody from taking massive action. So if you're afraid, find someone that's not afraid. Ask the questions you may have. Okay? So that's really the biggest thing is to look. So circling back to a lot of things that we do, notice the default list is a big one. We're in a rising rate environment, but people still have more equity historically than they ever have. So there's a lot of opportunity to buy and sell houses because people are always looking for something newer and bigger. Okay. So notice the default lists are a big thing. Local RIA groups are a big thing. If you have any local connect groups in your area or Facebook groups, you can post in there and ask about those kind of things. There are people out there wholesaling apartment buildings right now, making millions of dollars a year. It's crazy the things you'll find that you never thought of. There's people that wholesale commercial buildings. It's amazing out there. And people that wholesale dry cleaners and laundromats and things like that you would never imagine. And of course, you've got business brokers that do businesses. So there's all kinds of opportunity in the world. You just have got to search it out. So I invite people to kind of look at everything and see where the value lies and figure that out. What's the next one, Ryan? Okay, so exit strategy. This is the most important thing for us when we look at a property. So when we evaluate if we're going to buy something, or even a property in general, we look at every single exit strategy, and we like to have multiple to make sure it makes sense. So sometimes it makes sense to flip and rehab. Maybe you think you got such a great deal on this home, you could put 15 or 20 grand in and turn it around and sell it, make 50. That's pretty much a no-brainer, right? After your costs, right? You can wholesale it. Maybe it's in a neighborhood you don't know anything about, but you got a deal and you know someone else will give you 10 or 15 grand, you can wholesale it, right? Hotel. So hotel is, I mean, it's basically you lock it up and then retail it off into the market. Right now in the market, even junk is selling. You know, I joke that you could put a bow on a roof on cow dung and probably sell it and get money. So that's just the crazy way to go. Lease down we talked about. So there are a lot of buyers in the market that have the capacity to come out of pocket 10, 20%, but either they don't qualify. So either they don't prove any income, or there's not a program that works for them, or even if they can prove income, they don't prove enough income, but they've got a history of making a huge payment, right? So we'll do the lease to owns. Like I said, what we'll do is we'll put someone in a house, get 10 to 20% out of them in option money. Now, mind you, it's not down payment. So technically it's our money if they don't perform. We want them to perform because I don't want to take somebody's money, but we also want to protect ourselves. So we do a lease option. We put them in. We give them a guaranteed price they can buy it for in 2 years, based on an appreciated value of 5, 6, 7% a year. Our market's crazy right now, so that's a great deal for most people. And then we give them the option to get qualified in 2 years. If they don't qualify, we'll rewrite the terms of the contract. We'll make sure it's fair for them and us. If they can't perform, the market's appreciated such in our area that oftentimes, you know, we'd give them their money back and let them go away because we can retail and make more money, you know, if that's what it comes down to. We really want to help people get houses. But the nice thing is when someone's got 10 or 20% down in a house, they've got skin in the game. They're going to be your best tenants you've ever had as a landlord. We don't really like single family rentals, but we love lease options because it protects us. It gives us everything you'd ever need to know, right? Obviously the BRRRR method, talk a little bit about that. Of course, the buy, you fix it up, you rent it, you refinance and repeat. Airbnb, of course, or you become the bank. So you become the bank is when you have more money. So that's a tricky one, but eventually if you buy stuff cheap enough and you have enough institutional money, or you can create your own fund, then you can become the bank and do that. Now let's talk about the BRRRR method, refinance. So let's talk about refinance options again. So you've got traditional lending options, you know, like what I do as a lender, conforming options, banks, credit unions, things like that. You know, Fannie Freddie guidelines. You put 20% down. You qualify based off your income and the rents. Okay, that's one finance method. Okay, locally to us, we have a bank and a credit union. Like I mentioned, we have one bank here locally that literally places a line of credit on a property. So it's almost like a giant HELOC, and you can pay interest only for 10 years. So that's a good way to carry it for a year or two at lower overall costs. And then we have another credit union that will put us on as a guarantor, and they'll give us a mortgage on 30 years at better rates than we can offer in the wholesale channel, because there are banks that are lending portfolio money, and you know, allow you to finance for 20, 30 years. And that's, if you're going to do long term, that's what we've tried to do in our long term stuff. That's the finance we try to get in our lease options. That way we're locked on long term fixed rates, so that if the lessor does not perform, we know that we can put somebody else in there and rinse and repeat the same opportunity again. Okay, so those are really the biggest things. Ryan, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Jimmy, we had one question come in, and somebody thinking about starting their own kind of like business here with this. Do you recommend anything like starting an LLC, or like anything to help like protect them as like a starting up as an operation or a business?
Yeah, I mean, we run everything through LLCs. I mean, we put our property in LLCs because it gives. I mean, and again, I'm not an accountant, so talk to your accountant. But yeah, 100%, you want to buy these and hold these outside of your own name. So if something ever happened, you are 100% protected. Now, if you're going to run an entire business off of it, and you don't have any employees, you may want to have a conversation about the LLC and then like a subchapter S, like an S corporation, if you're going to start drawing a bunch of money. The cool thing is, so you as individuals will get the tax breaks and tax benefits of buying houses, even if you have a regular job. If you're a real estate or mortgage professional and your occupation is more than a certain amount of hours a year, it's like 1,600 hours, like 40-hour weeks, then you get even better benefits. And then you also get the ability to do a lot more things. Now, if you own these properties and carry them in the real estate market, you can carry them as inventory. And there's a lot of things you can do when it comes to like depreciation and bonus depreciation and cost segregation. And again, I am not an accountant, so I'm not going to discuss how exactly all that works because that's an accountant's job. But just know that last year we carried through the year about $3 or $4 million in property. And by the time I got done doing cost seg on a lot of those, because we held them, we have not sold them yet, I was able to reduce my tax burden by hundreds of thousands of dollars. So there's a lot of benefits to owning real estate, whether it be commercial or residential. But those are for a tax professional. We're not talking H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt. We're talking about a CPA that understands the real estate market. And if you don't know one of those, again, I emphasize go back to the local RIA group and talk to these guys that own 20, 30, 40, 50 doors and see how they do it. Because you're going to find in our world, the people that make the most money are the most giving of advice and time, because they know that's how they got there. And they also know that by helping you get there, it just builds them as well. So, part of the reason why, even we're teaching these classes here at U Mortgage is because we want people, yes, obviously we'd love you to do a traditional mortgage with us, but we want people to be financially literate and have opportunity in America. More wealth is built through real estate and the ownership of real estate than any other method, ever. Other than, obviously there's some crypto millionaires, you bought your SHIB and your Doge and you're rocking and rolling, right? But it's still different because long-term, historically, real estate generates more overall wealth. If you look at someone that owns a house and doesn't own a house, it's dramatic in how much better they retire. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks, Jimmy. And one more question rolled in, and looking at, if you could look back at yourself when you just started out, what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Oh man, you know what? If we talk all the time, my business partner and I. I'm very fortunate to have a great job. I get paid very well to do what I do. But we talk all the time about if we knew then what we know now, we would have held every single property and or started earlier. But we didn't know about lease options. We didn't know about long-term holds. We didn't know about all those things. We were just looking for a quick buck, right? In hindsight, some of the very first houses we bought, if we'd held them till today, we'd have made $200,000 on in like 3 years, 4 years kind of thing. So learning how to evaluate a deal better in the beginning is key, and surrounding yourself with the right people that can help you do that. Now, there's a lot of shysters out there. We've got a pretty awesome group of local investors that, I can call 4 people right now if I need money and get it. And these are well-known names in the community just because they're reputable, good people. And so that's why you want to make sure that you do your due diligence on that and make sure you know who you partner with. Now, back to the next thing I would have done. We would have found better contractors in the beginning and made sure we had everything lined up, because my partner did a lot of the work manually and frankly probably cost himself more money than it made us. So knowing good tradesmen that are looking for work and that can give you guidance is valuable. And maybe even getting those very same general contractors, whoever it may be, give them a piece of the pie so they're motivated. That seems to work as well as anything else.
That's really great advice. Thanks, Jimmy. That's all for the questions we've seen coming currently. If anybody has any other questions, we definitely have time to field them. I encourage you to throw them in the chat or the Q&A like you had them. But Jimmy, is there any closing remarks that you'd like to make here? Anything to wrap up?
No, it's, like I said, there's not a ton of, this is a pretty straightforward process. For me, it's, you just, they always say it takes money to make money. I disagree. I think you can find money and then you have your own money to help make money, because that gives you better leverage. So I think you can find off-market properties and wholesales and then build it up. Are you going to go out and buy a rental today? Maybe not. You're going to need 20% down traditionally with most products out there. Most of your DSCRs are 15 to 20% down. Most of your investment loans are 15 to 20% down. So you're not just going to all of a sudden magically roll into that. Now, if you're a veteran, different animal, because you can finance, if you have the income, you can finance a fourplex at 100% financing on a fourplex. You got to live in one of the units, but then eventually down the road, you could turn that into a rental and go do it again, rinse and repeat. So there are some creative ways to do it. FHA has some creative ways to get into duplexes and fourplexes as well. A couple caveats to FHA. So FHA, you can buy a fourplex with 3.5% down. So this is good. This is good advice for you guys. Pay attention. A duplex, you can use the rent from the other side to help offset some of the payment. Now, the kicker is when you go to 3 and 4 units with FHA, you run into what they call self-sufficiency. So traditionally in rents, when they count rents, they count 75% of market rents and or the rent roll appraisal. So if your place is renting for $1,000, they're going to let you use $750. If you buy a fourplex, obviously you have to occupy with FHA at 3.5% down. If you buy a fourplex with that product, the other 3 units rents at 75% has to cover the mortgage payment. Duplex, no. Triplex, fourplex, yes. So, but that's a great way to get in. If you live in a town where real estate's still relatively inexpensive, that's an amazing way to start. Now, if you're moving from a single family home where you got 5 people living there and down the road you buy a fourplex and they're trying to convince you you're going to move in there, underwriter's not buying it, right? Then you need 20% down. But if you're looking to get investing early, that's an awesome way to do it. Duplex, or maybe a house with a mother-in-law apartment in the basement, or attached, or even an ADU. ADUs, a lot of cities are starting to allow accessory dwelling units. Another way that you can cash flow your unit and move it forward. Obviously, if you're going to be in this game and you need to use income to qualify down the road, I do suggest you claim it on your taxes. We put it on our taxes as well, but it's not on our credit. So the debts don't currently count against us. Now, obviously, we have to pull the curtain back and show the underwriter those things, because they're like, well, how do you have $7,000 in cash or whatever the number is without any properties? Well, we do own properties. They just don't show up because we're double arm's length away from them. That way, if something happened to one of our properties, all they're getting to me is the property, not to me. So the other thing you want to look at, of course, is real estate trusts. So, and again, a good real estate attorney will help you with that. Now, some ways to invest in these properties and see less tax burden. I'm going to give you some things you want to look up and do research on and talk to financial planners about. Again, I am not that guy. So because I don't have a Series 6 or 63 or 7, and I'm not a CPA. So I preface it with that. But a lot of people will invest in real estate using what they call a self-directed IRA or self-directed 401k if you're self-employed. Basically, you control the money. And let's say you have a self-directed IRA that you convert to a Roth. So Roth grows tax-free and pays out tax-free. So let's say you have a bunch of money in IRA. You decide to roll it to a self-directed Roth at that point, right? So maybe you pay your taxes or whatever that looks like. At that point, you can literally use that money to do this method, to find houses, to rehab houses, fix houses. And when the profits come back, you stick them right back in that IRA, never pay taxes on it. So again, talk to an accountant, but those are just some creative ways to avoid taxes even further. Now, again, there are people that specialize. There's a company called Directed IRA out of Arizona. I believe Justin Sorensen's the guy that owns it. They can walk you through a lot of these things. But when you've got tax shelters, and frankly, you need tax shelters, you start making a bunch of money. That's one way to move the money around. So those are really the biggest things I suggest, is if you're going to play this game, play it correctly. Find the right people to mentor you. Find the right partners. Figure out what part you're good at. And if you're not good at all of it, find someone that's good at that part and partner up, right? I'm not an acquisition guy. I'm a money guy. So my partner's the acquisition guy. He's great at finding stuff. I'm great at helping fund stuff. So that's why we work so well together. So there are always people looking to park their money. They're always looking for something that's safer. Real estate's still the safest investment there is, because it's more than like, even in a depreciating cycle like 13, 14 years ago, real estate's still way ahead compared to where it was even before that. So those are the things I recommend looking at. I do recommend being structured correctly, protecting yourself at all times with legal paperwork. There's plenty of it. There's another guy online, Bill Bronchek. I think it's Bronchek is how he is pronounced. You might find videos on YouTube about him. He talks about lease option stuff, subject to stuff, seller financing as well. That's a great way to get in, because let's give an example here. You'll love this. So let's say you found a property that was the seller would carry the note, and they just wanted out and didn't really care about getting any money. They just wanted to make sure the payment's made, right? Because they were going to lose it. Okay. So what you do is you go in, and maybe they're at 3%. You go in, you wrap that thing up, you bring somebody else in, have them give you money, like a down payment, and you sell it to them on contract, and you cash flow, and you become the bank at that point. So you are the bank without any risk, because as long as that payment of the original note's made, nothing ever happens. So the rate's 3%, you charge someone 5 or 6% because they can't get financed anywhere else. You make that, whatever the appreciation is every month, plus you charge them money to come in and buy it on contract. So that's how you can literally do subject to or seller financing and roll it and make more money. So, and frankly, you're taking care of people that need help, because most people aren't going to go find the deal. A lot of people don't qualify for the deal, but it's amazing how much money people have, right? So those are just a handful of ways that you can start thinking through your brain about how to maximize this to get started. Do we have any other questions, Ryan?
No other questions at the moment, Jimmy. And thanks for going through all these details and really a wealth of information here. So a great thing is we're going to be having some replays take course over the weekend, and this session, we'll be doing one of them. So if you're sitting in this session, you're like, hey, I've been interested with this. I have a family member, a friend. They should have seen this with me. You're going to have a chance to revisit some of these things this weekend and see this advice again. So I'd like to thank Jimmy for showing up, and actually a few minutes he talked about the great things of VA loans. So that's teasing what we have coming up next at 3:30. Jimmy's going to be back with us, and he's going to be talking about VA loans, a great thing for our veterans and those who serve. So we're really looking forward to having you back, Jimmy, in just a little bit, about 45 minutes here. But thank you to everyone who showed up and participated here in the session. We really appreciate you. And Jimmy, we appreciate you contributing to Financial Literacy Week.
Awesome. Love it. Happy to be here.
All right. Thank you, and take care, everyone. We look forward to seeing you back in a little bit.
All right. See you guys.